Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I want to first make sure that everyone can access Spanish interpretation if that is needed. You should be able to see either at the bottom of your screen a globe that says interpretation or maybe language interpretation. If you click that, you can access the Spanish interpretation. I'm going to ask one of our Spanish interpreters to please say that in Spanish, and then we can begin simultaneous interpretation. Thank you so much. All right. As folks are figuring out and making sure that they can hear Spanish interpretation, I see in the chat that people couldn't hear the Spanish language speaker. I'm going to make sure that we have that going. Okay, so hopefully we are figuring out the Spanish interpretation. Okay, folks if you weren't able to hear the interpretation, you might have needed to be on the English channel. But if you were on the Spanish channel, I believe you should be able to hear interpretation. Okay, hopefully that is figured out. Thank you everyone for your patience as we make sure that we're trying to have all of our language access set up and ready to go. All right, so now that we've had that figured out, let's go ahead and get started. I'm very excited for this conversation today, very excited for this really important conversation with some really powerful speakers. But first, let me tell you who I am. My name is Jaden. My pronouns are he, him. I will give a description for visible access. I'm Black, bald-headed with headphones over my ears. I have on a polka dot ascot with a white shirt with big black round circles on it. I'm wearing a dark red lipstick and glasses. I have a virtual background that is lavender and a black outline of my face with the words that say, "Dear trans sibling survivor." Despite how they've tried to silence our brilliance, we are still here. And I am the co-director of Memoirs. We are a national organizing and storytelling project that centers and uplifts the leadership, healing, and wisdom of queer, trans, and intersex, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color who survive child sexual abuse. And I'm joined today by some really powerful organizers, activists, and really powerful folks who are going to be talking about what actually constitutes self-defense for Black trans survivors. So I'm going to introduce our first panelist. That is Wriply Bennet. Wriply Marie Bennet is a proud self-taught illustrator, activist, organizer, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. As an artist, her work expresses the perseverance, power, strength, resilience, grace, and beauty of Black trans women, femmes, and other QTPOC folk, and sheds light on the Black trans community and the crying out for recognition and justice. She is a founding member of Be Quick and one of the co-founders of THORN's Self-Defense Project, striving to arm and prepare BIPOC, queer, trans, and disabled folks to protect themselves and make it home safely. So if we can have Wriply, if you could turn your camera on.
Hi there, Wriply Bennet.
All right, our next panelist is Ky Peterson. Ky is a trans advocate from South Georgia who was incarcerated for self-defense. During his incarceration, he fought for trans prisoners' rights to medical care. In 2017, Ky founded Freedom Overground, an initiative that supports the TGNC incarcerated community. Today, Ky shares his story of courage and perseverance with TGNC communities across the country. Ky, if you could turn your camera on.
Hello, everyone.
And our final panelist is edxi. edxi is an Afro, Blackfeet, Indigenous, trans, feminine, Pine, multimedia, and insurrectionary artist and organizer. Her work entails political education while providing material support to marginalized and colonized communities, creating art and media for the sake of propagating resistance culture, counter-narrative, and collective liberatory projects that spark discourse, sources of healing, critical thought, dialogue, mutual aid, and direct action. edxi speaks at different schools, events, and community spaces to discuss anti-colonial struggles and the power of collective radical consent. Let's see if you could turn your camera on.
Okay, Tamakkanatani, good morning, friends and relatives.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much for being here today and for sharing your story and your wisdom with us. So let's go ahead and get started so we can really have enough time for a fruitful and generative conversation. So my first question to all of you is tell us about yourself, what you do in the world, and your relationship to self-defense as a survivor of multiple forms of violence. And I do notice in the chat, I want to remind us all to speak slowly for our interpreters. So I'll pass it to you first, Wriply.
Hi, y'all. Wriply Marie Bennet. Pronoun she, her, hers, queen, goddess, sister, and my liege. That was kind of fast. I'm a Black trans artist and activist and organizer. I'm based out of Chicago, Illinois. I am a co-founder of THORN Self-Defense Project. And we build care packages to send off to BIPOC TGNC folk who are in need of self-defense care weapons.
Thank you, Wriply. Let's pass it to Ky.
Hi, I'm Ky. Wow. Um, what I do now is pretty much just stay in constant communication with those that are still incarcerated. I offer support to those that are incarcerated. Things like sending care packages, any type of medical information that they may need. I've started a few new projects. They're in the working, so they're not all up and running yet. But my biggest thing is my goal is to just to support those people while they're inside and be able to help them when they're out. Because I know it's hard to it's really hard to come home and transition from that environment to this environment. So I want to make it less stressful and easier for those people that are coming out, because I've recently had to face coming from that environment to coming into the free world, as they like to call it. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Thank you, Ky and edxi. And I do want to remind folks to make sure you're speaking up so that everyone can hear you.
Hi, I'm edxi. So a little bit about me is I spent most of my organizing experience of the last decade just doing mutual aid work. A lot of you are familiar with mutual aid. It's either, doing similar court support or jail support for people creating art that is helping with prison letter writing correspondence. And then, putting narratives out in the world that is counter to the dominant narrative that says that we ain't shit, as well as, tells us who we are. And I guess to be more specific about particular things is like as part of like zine collectives or food programs, or during the I would print out zines and like pass them around during like uprisings and during the pandemic, creating like medicines to hand out to people. So a lot of autonomous community organizing that doesn't necessarily involve a 501c3 or nonprofit. And that's the gist of it.
Thank you. I'd love to hear all of you speak a little bit more about what your experiences have been with navigating self-defense, advocating to defend yourselves in your communities as survivors of many different forms of violence, and especially as Black trans people. I'll start with you, Wriply.
So organized. If you hear a little echo, I had to open my recording door because it kept saying I had an unstable connection, so I had to open the door. But well, honestly, I've always been one of the girls that was always ready for the kick drum, So I would always tell girls, be ready for the kick drum. You never know when it's gonna happen. Wear sensible shoes, comfortable enough to fight or run in. Always have your blade on you. Always be prepared, you got your pepper spray, have a safety phone call, all of that jazz. I've always been hypervigilant ever since I was a kid. So that was something that I knew was important for our community to, especially for young trans girls coming into the community, and they haven't really experienced as much outward violence, because of background or socioeconomic status or, where they grew up. So I try my best to, prepare them for what's coming at them in this world. And a lot of us, we already know. So, it's just about getting the resources to the people who need them. This year's been kind of hard, especially since, we started THORN just before, I think it was August or September. So before the pandemic really started strangling people, we started around then. And I was just like, well, this is great. No, that's a lie. The pandemic had already happened. Okay, no, this was the next year. That's when we started, the next year. And it was hard to do all the things that we wanted to do, especially with creating classes for self-defense trainings, for weapons trainings, and for legal trainings so that you can get your Foley cards, so that you can carry these things that we're giving you. But regardless of the Foley card or whatnot, we're not a 501c3, so we're just handing you things to protect yourself. Girl, come home. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you so much. Ky, I'd like to pass it to you.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, so my work actually started, I would say, while in the process of, I guess, dealing with my prison sentence. I was arrested for defending myself, and before that, I had to, fight a lot just because of how I looked and what people thought of me. Oh, that's just a girl trying to be a boy, and it was always something that happened. And so now it's like every day is a fight, but it's a totally different fight than before. Now I'm not just fighting to just be who I am. I'm fighting to actually live this life that to me is so precious, but to other people, they don't see it that way. So I have to fight for my rights. I have to fight for other people and their rights, even though a lot of people don't really know all the rights that they have, and that it's okay to be who you are, because for a long time, we were told that it's not. So that's one of the things that, I have to fight with, I have to battle with. Me and my family still have some issues, because if you can't call me by the correct pronouns, then I'm not going to answer your calls or your texts until you can get it right. So it's just, this has been a ongoing thing, and it's not going to stop now. So I'm just happy to be a part of it and have other people who are fighting for not just what I believe in, but what they also believe in, and to show people that, we do exist, and, whether they like it or not, we're going to be here, so that's how I feel about it. And I just want people to really understand that, we're people too. But before you look at our race, our sex, our gender, any of that, think about it this way: we're human first. You have to be a person before anything else. Before you take into, account anything else about that person, you look at them as an actual person. Then you can judge based off of character and everything else, but don't make those assumptions just based off of how a person looks, or, their sexual preference, or any of those things, because that's not important. That's irrelevant. So we have to continue to fight until people realize that trans people are people too, and we have rights, and we're going to fight for our rights. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ky. And before I pass it to you, edxi, I want to remind all of us to speak slowly. I'm going to make this sign if we're speeding up. So edxi, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I think my relationship to self-defense is definitely tied to my politics, my political beliefs, my upbringing. I think that I was saying before, and Wriply has acknowledged, a lot of the work that we're doing is to try to create the conditions that don't allow for us to experience this kind of harm. So I think a lot of self-defense for me is also tied to, of course, looking at the future of movements and just the kind of liberatory work that we're doing and making sure it isn't completely regulated by our enemies, such as the state, colonization. So, I've attempted to opt out of work that might collude with specific institutions because of those reasons. And I think that is a form of self-defense, protecting our needs to have like real and true autonomy over the things that we do, instead of being moved and pushed along by the kind of systems and structures that are inherently oppressive and that are literally responsible for people's biases against us. So specific reforms, I'm not really for, and I take that as an act of self-defense, like not wanting to wholeheartedly nestle ourselves into the kind of piecemeal reforms or concessions that might help our lives momentarily, but in the long run, it kind of expands colonial and coercive state power. And personally, I've always been gender nonconforming, and so I think at some point I was trying to diminish and deny and ultimately kill the feminine parts of me. And I think self-defense is me owning that now, me reclaiming that, me doing everything I can to protect other people's feminine parts of themselves, whether they be, women or men. I think there's a lot of power in that. That's all. I don't want to take up too much space.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for naming that. And I especially naming how defense, like the many ways that we all have to defend ourselves and our whole selves. Which takes us very nicely to our next question. So often when Black trans people, when we're trying to defend ourselves and our communities, I think you spoke to this a little bit, Wriply, as well, it's deemed violent by things like the state. And so if you could, I would love to hear a little bit more about how your defense work has been deemed violent, and how do you counter that narrative, if you even pay attention to that narrative. How do you push back against that? And we can change the order this time. Let's start with, and you know what? Let's keep it. I like the order. Let's start with you, Wriply, and then we'll go Ky and edxi.
Ooh, okay. Yes. Well, honestly, THORN is still so new that there hasn't been a lot of pushback. But as a Black trans bitch growing up throwing bricks, like the fault always falls on me. No matter what happens, no matter if they're trying to jump me, or if there's some adult throwing McDonald's beverages out their window at me when I was a kid walking down the street, like, it doesn't matter. If I get rowdy or if I get out of pocket, it falls on me. So the problem is our bodies aren't deemed as human, aren't deemed as respectable. So we're automatically seen as criminals, not only because of the color of our skin, but because of the way that we present. We are criminals already. So if we're going to be criminals, I might as well be a criminal who's a villain. Come on, try me. I'm going to conquer the world with your blood.
Period. Thank you. Let's pass it to Ky.
I don't know if I want to go to that. I think you should, I'm not even sure if I want to go. Wow. All I can say is wow to that. Honestly, I think that, you know, the way that I handle the backlash and the negativity is I just jump out with something else, because it's like, even when I'm doing good and I'm helping other people, someone is going to have something negative to say. So why not me stay in their face so they constantly have to see me? So you're still going to be talking about me, but now I'm giving you something to talk about. And I just think about it, like, I remember growing up and my mom would be like, you know, I get tired of these people talking about me, or whatever it was that I would come in and complain about. And she's like, you know, they're only talking about you because you're doing something they're not doing. So that's the way I look at it. Like, I try to turn that negativity that they're throwing at me into something positive, because it's like, it's going to happen no matter what you're doing, where you are in life. If a person thinks that you have one little thing more than them, then they're gonna bash you. They're gonna do it. It's that human nature. Why it happens, I can't tell you, but for me, when that does happen, you know, I just try to counter. I just stay so much in the media, but in a totally different light. You know, so I just try to change that whole narrative, everything around, to make it fit what I need it to fit, and to pretty much, I guess, sometimes do damage control, because it happens.
I'll pass it to you.
My friend Raina Ripper was once we were talking, and she was telling me about how it's kind of cute and hilarious that I'm often like, you know, like I not that, not to, we were just like making light of like our really traumatic experiences, but she was just like, it's like funny and kind of cute that like so many of your interactions, or being criminalized, or being like arrested, like you're caught with like a weapon. But it's like, you know, like thinking of experiences with self-defense, there was an event that I did, I think in 2014 or 2013, called Queer Apocalypse, where like, it was like a 3-day event that like was supposed to highlight self-defense. And, you know, the first night was a cute Kiki. And then the second one, we like stormed an anarchist book fair that was happening out here in Tongva lands, because there was really no centering of queer and trans people of color voices. And during that, we had, you know, specific trainings, and we collectively bought about 100 kitty knuckles, and distributed them to all queer and trans people of color, or just queer and trans people in general. And later I was arrested for, I think I was houseless at the time, and I was caught with one of the kitty knuckles. And the reason why I was arrested was actually because I was like attempting to liberate medicine that I needed, because I was like, had $10 to my name. And I was like, I'm just gonna try to liberate this medicine, and got caught, was put in a men's jail. And yeah, like the whole focus was on the kitty knuckles, the composite knuckles that I had. And then cut to like another time in 2016, where I was arrested at the airport, and I had forgotten that, you know, I had an expandable baton in my duffel bag, because I think, again, I was living in a precarious situation and basically like houseless for a while. And I needed, you know, protection. And I was arrested on the spot at the airport because of my history of activism and whatnot. But the point is, you know, I think that it's really important to like I still am like worried that if I'm walking down the street that I might get like stopped by the police and like searched, and if I happen to have like a weapon on me, it might be over again. I think that there should be something said more to like trans people being able to carry these weapons, considering the conditions that we're living in for us to have to arm ourselves. And I still can continue to advocate for us to arm ourselves when, like, you know, the world is how it is. I don't think there's any safer places for us to go that isn't under the threat of attack. So I think, you know, like there have been people that have told me, other privileged people that have told me like, oh, I don't really want to carry that like spiritual weight around with me. And I just take like mad offense to that, because it's like, well, you have the privilege to walk around not having, you know, people hassle you, not maybe being perceived as one thing, and then upon being found out that you're trans, then your life is in danger. So it's just kind of like, it's been Wild West for trans people. And, you know, I think like what's interesting about the pandemic is people, a lot of trans people that I've been talking to have really, they were like not really seeing so much of a difference in the changes of our lives. Like some of us have become extremely isolated and reclusive because of the experiences that we face and the spiritual warfare that we face when stepping outside of our homes, if we're lucky enough to have homes. So yeah, that's just my experience with that.
Yeah, edxi, and I'm sorry, I just wanted to add on to that. When we are out in public, bitch, the gag can happen anywhere. Like at the DMV, the gag can happen anywhere. Like I was literally there to change my name and my gender marker, and there's a person behind the counter who's screaming, "We've got a name and gender marker change over here." And I'm just like, well, damn, bitch, just call out the dogs, why don't you? So we've got to be prepared. Like, and I remember not too long ago, actually, I was flying from Columbus to St. Louis for my gallery opening for Transfuturism. And I was flying, I think, American Airlines. And I was just like, well, you know, I have my self-defense weapons in this bag. And
Your sound went out, Ripley. We can't hear you. We can't hear you anymore.
what? I can't
Oh.
carry the weapons that I need to protect myself? Right. So I have to go to another airline and mum's the word so that I can get onto the plane. Like, and it was just like, shit happens, and we don't have all states, so we've got our weapons.
Ripley, unfortunately, part of your story cut out, the sound cut out for a second, right before I think they were asking you about the weapons you were carrying for self-defense. So could you, if you wouldn't mind, could you share that part of the story one more time? Because folks missed it, and I think it's important for folks to really hear the full of your story.
The hits just keep coming with this internet, thank God. What was I? Okay. So I was getting onto the plane. I missed the plane because my partner wasn't up and I didn't have money on me to pay for my bag. So I had to book another flight. And they were just like, well, why can't you just check this bag, the smaller bag, like, or carry this bag on? I was like, well, it has my self-defense weapons in it. And she was just like, oh, well, we can't have you carry those onto the plane. I'm like, it's going under the plane. Oh, that doesn't matter. I'm like, girl, the guy can happen anywhere. I'm not walking down any street in any city without my weapons, you know? And I always try to be very mindful of the fact that my weapons are going in my bag, and I try to position them so that nobody runs into them while they check in my suitcase, because I am an activist and they do like to leave me love notes, you know, TSA. So, hey, your bag looks suspicious. Just wanted to let you know everything was fine. I'm like, yeah, bitch, you missed the weed and my weapons. Cool. But the gag. But so it's important to be ready. And I don't understand why there's so much like pushback against people trying to protect themselves. Like you see it from a young age about you protecting yourself, like you get suspended or expelled for fighting people who started it, you know, or, you know, you bring pepper spray to school for a friend of yours who happens to be getting followed home from the bus stop, you know? So,
Absolutely. I really appreciate you all naming like the different strategies, like the sort of the different just things we have to consider, things you have to take into consideration, the plans you have to have, the many different mental maneuvers you have to make just to move about the world, just to leave your home if you have one. And like you were saying, Etsy, the spiritual warfare and like the ways that just can sit so heavy on your spirit, to have to like just hold all of that. You have to consider your own safety and be on the lookout that your safety like measures hopefully don't cause someone else harm, because then that could even make it worse for you. So I really appreciate you all naming these different strategies that you've been utilizing around your own self-defense work. I would love to hear, you know, because you mentioned trans futurism, and I think you've talked about this too, Etsy. As Black trans people, like we have to dream and imagine ourselves into existence, really. Like we are visionaries. Otherwise, we wouldn't continue to exist in the world that is like so committed to our genocide, really. And so I would love to hear, to get visionary with you, I would love to hear your vision of a world where Black trans people are safe, period. And like what needs to happen so that we can have that kind of world. And we can keep the same order.
okay. I wasn't sure if we was gonna change it up. Can you hear me? Open it just a little bit from all right. Well, I think first things first, we can't be, you know, all about our people as Black folk and people of color, and not hold our people accountable for throwing children to the streets, to the wolves. We can't be all about our people and not hold our people accountable when Black trans women are being murdered, you know, by the very people that we are trying to protect, you know, Black cis men, or being ignored by Black cis women. So it's important that we hold folks accountable so that we can uplift one another moving forward to build a safer space for all of us. Education is key. It's important to educate yourself to not rely on some old dogma that you grew up with, that you were burdened by, even when you were a child, to grow up and rely so heavily on it that it causes you to throw family members to the wind, especially the children. We're already working so hard on decriminalizing sex work, which is very important. A lot of people that I know, a lot of Black trans activists all across this country are doing their best they can to decriminalize sex work in their city so that we can build safer networks for sex workers, so that we can protect one another, and so that we aren't lost in between the cracks. Honestly, it's hard to see a future when your present is so mucky, you know? But this system is built a sandcastle. It'll fall apart.
Thank you, Ripley. I'll just pass it to you, Ky. What's your vision for a world where Black trans people are safe, and how do we get there?
I would actually say my vision would just be, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of a hard one, but a easy one at the same time. Like, it's one of those questions where it really makes you think, and it's like, we already know the answer, but how is this going to happen? It's like one of those questions. And the thing is, honestly, we have to accept responsibility for our actions, you know, that holding each other accountable, being more responsible, and to actually start stepping out and doing things and not just be that little voice, you know, put some action to it. So, and in order for, I guess, I know for me to feel safe, I would say I need something that is for people just like me, that's going to be led by somebody just like me, not by, you know, the other people, because in those spaces, I don't feel safe. Like, I've had several jobs since I came home, but I didn't feel safe. These were jobs ran by, you know, old Southern white men that had no understanding of what it means to be Black or trans. So I faced so much just in the workplace. And if it was places that was, I would say, Black led, and, you know, so it would be more, to me, that would be safe, in my opinion, because then I will be in the room or in the same area with a person who knows what it feels like to be me, who knows what it feels like to be Black and have to get up and go outside your door and wonder what's going to happen, if it's going to be a good day or a bad day, if you're going to have to, you know, you're driving down the street and the cops see you in this nice neighborhood, are you going to get pulled over? I want to work with somebody that knows the struggles I face and have overcame them, and that keeps moving forward. That way, that'll motivate me to continue to move forward and not stop. So that's what I need. I need to see success on the Black level, down on a level where it's close to me, to where I can see it, and not just the people on TV, not just those people, but normal everyday Black people that are successful and that are looking to make a change and that are actually doing something about it. That's my vision.
Thank you, Ky. Let's hear from you. What's your vision for this world where Black trans people are safe?
Yeah, I think that a world for specifically Black and trans people to be safe would be one without prisons, without police, and without the state. And I think that's more free than people are ready to be. As Sadia Hartman would put it, I think that if we're wanting to abolish the state, we would also have to look at our interpersonal relations and do a lot of transforming, realizing that we have, for hundreds of years, have been socialized by these very, very toxic and oppressive complementary systems of domination and oppression. And I think that, you know, it's on its way. People are doing what they can to achieve that world. But I think, you know, I have to speak to when certain things aren't enough, or when people have really failed us. The people who probably aren't in the room, the people who refuse to be in the room, specifically this room, specifically on this Zoom meeting, you know, look at all of the people who registered. I'm certain it's not majority cis hetero men, the men that are actually harming us, killing us, being down low, gaslighting us, telling us we aren't what we are, while in the same sentence telling us like we're the most gorgeous whatevers. Those people really need to step the fuck up. I'm so tired of my sisters, my other trans siblings, relatives, having these stories about the harm that they're afraid of experiencing or experiencing. There's a lawnmower going off in outside of my room right now, so apologies if you can't hear me what timing. But I think that, you know, a lot of the allies or even accomplices, whatever you want to call them, who are cis, have really failed us. There's so much more that people could be doing, specifically the cis hetero male allies that are out there. If you're not talking openly about your desires, about the specific traumas that you've experienced being forced into becoming the kind of hypermasculine man that you are, where are we? And then also looking at the history of colonization and how these gender norms, these rigid gender roles are just things that have been whipped into us. This shit isn't our shit initially. So instead of replicating the kinds of toxic dynamics that we've been bestowed or that have been imposed upon us, let's create something else. Yes, we don't know what regions or landmass, some Black people don't know the regions or landmass that they're from or that they can, you know, learn from, but at least, like, you know, we are innovative people. Let's think of other things. Let's dream those dangerous dreams of a future, because, you know, yeah, keep hearing these stories about the baby or Lil Baby. I'm not sure which one which rapper it was, and talking shit about, you know, Lil Nas X, and I'm just like, there's no reason to be so threatened by some sort of like agenda, some queer trans agenda, when in actuality, the agenda has always been a cis normative, hetero, patriarchal agenda. Like, these are, like, there was literally an agenda that constructed that man and woman are correct and everything else is criminal and against the law. So these kinds of laws that the state created has really created the kind of morality that people still live with. And yeah, I just think that we have to do the most to abolish the state, as well as like get people to kill the kind of cops that are in their head that makes you police our genders in violent ways. That's all.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for naming that. And I think, you know, I think you sort of spelled out for us edxi, like that in order to really create this world, like it goes so much further. Like we have to destroy the current world as it exists. Like because it was created to destroy us. And so if we actually want to have the world where we can, specifically Black trans people, and when we center us, that means other people will also be blessed by the things that we need, and so if we actually want that world, we have to destroy everything that exists, and I really appreciate all of you sharing you started naming different specific tools that are, quote unquote, accomplices that we're calling them now, or like whatever we're calling the people who don't live this life, but want to somehow support us and be about this life somehow. And so that takes us to this next question. What are some things or some ways that these quote unquote accomplices can start to leverage their privilege? Plenty of folks are now very much aware that they have this privilege, and it seems like the constant question that they're grappling with is like, what do we do? What are we supposed to do? And I know that there is endless knowledge out there, many of which all of you have contributed to through the many works that you all have created and put out. So I would love to hear from you. What are some things that our accomplices who are in this space, who are thinking about trying to support people with access to self-defense in different ways, what can they be doing to leverage their privilege? And we'll keep the same rotation.
I would say it can't just be, oh, well, that's unfair, because it seems like that's what a lot of people who want to call themselves accomplices or allies do. They go, oh, this privilege, and then we explain about the privilege that they have as cis people, as white people, as heteronormative people. We explain this privilege that they have, and they say, oh, well, that's unfair. Hurting for you. But my understanding of being a true accomplice is that you understand where you stand in the world, you see it as bullshit, and you surrender every bit of privilege you have to allow those who don't have it to step up. You surrender it, you lay it down in any way you can, and allow those who don't have it to step up on that privilege. You uplift people with your privilege. Every space you're in, you disrupt it. Every conversation you have, you disrupt it. Even if it's God bless you, did he? I don't think he did. It's simple, yet complicated. Surrender everything. Surrender it all. Because the fact that you have it and no one else does, it's not just unfair, it's inhumane.
Thank you, Wriply. Thank you. Let's hear from you, Ky. What can accomplices be doing to leverage their privilege?
Well, I mean, Ripley pretty much said it all. I mean, honestly, that's really what needs to be done at this point, because a lot of the spaces that we need to be allowed into as, as people, as Black people, Black trans people, and we're not being allowed into certain spaces that we really need to get into. In order for us to continue to move forward, in order for us to, continue to grow as a people, we're going to need to be in those places where we can educate our youth and empower them to be better and to do better. Um, so for those people who want to, be a part of something, this cause or this movement as they so see it, then you're going to have to allow us to be in those same spaces with you. You can't just tweet about something and forget about it. You have to actually go out and do something. So give me that space, or give me whatever it is I need to educate and empower my people to help propel us forward to our next level. Because honestly, we don't have all the things we need. We're not going to have all the things we need because those things weren't given to us. We're having to fight just for the basics. So with not having everything and knowing that you have the potential to be something great, you have the potential to show a totally different way than the way that you were shown, because now you have been educated and empowered by somebody else who had to go down that walk that you walked down. And it's like, the kids need to see it. The kids need to know that there's a different way, because what I'm seeing now, I'm not liking it. And I have a son, he's 7, and I have a daughter, she's 1. I was recently married this year, but I have kids now, and even before then, I know that I will want them to live in a much better place than the place that I had to grow up, because it was so much negativity and hate just because of how I looked, because of how I acted. And I don't want other people to have to go through that, especially kids, because kids don't deserve it. We don't deserve it as adults, but because some people are so blinded by the bullshit that they were taught growing up, and they believe these lies, they're poisoning the whole society as a whole, when they should be helping and trying to find ways to improve the quality of life for each individual that's in their area, that's on that same road as you. You should be trying to improve the quality of life. But instead, you take from it and you beat a person down. You degrade that person. You do all those things to break them down instead of building them up. So if you're going to say you're an accomplice with me and this is what we're moving toward, then you need to allow me to have the same access you have to those spaces, no matter where they are. Allow me to go into those spaces and say what it is that I feel like needs to be said, to let people know you're not helping me by talking about it in that one little tweet or that one little message on Facebook. You got to bring me to the show. Bring me to where everyone is so I can let them know in my own words. Let me put the narrative out that I want to. That's what I think.
Thank you, Ky. Thank you so much. edxi, what do you have to say to the folks? How can accomplices leverage their privilege in defense of Black trans people?
Yeah, I think definitely decentering yourselves if you are in positions of power. I try to veer away from conversations of privilege only because everybody has privilege. Sorry again, every single time I talk, this lawnmower comes through and like, I don't know what that's about, but yeah, I think that, decentering yourselves, because like I'm noticing right now there's like a huge pushback of like cis hetero men feeling like they can't move or talk or blah, blah, blah. And like all that is in response to hundreds of years of, degradation, hundreds of years of people not really having the ability to speak their minds. And I think that, yeah, there's this interesting kind of knee-jerk defensiveness that doesn't really take into account the kind of positionalities that they exist in. So I really need people to do what they can to, like what Wriply was talking about before, destigmatize trans people in or out of your life. And also, of course, sex work needs to be destigmatized, but not just sex work, but sex workers. For some reason, there's like very well-known organizations that think that, by demonizing sex work, they're not doing any harm to sex workers, when it's like, come on, y'all, that's obviously like, it's going to, if you keep talking shit about sex work, that's going to overlap into, if you keep talking shit about trans ideology or transgenderism, like there are people who are embody these kinds of things that you keep shitting on and stigmatizing. And yeah, like I think I think people really want like a solid gold Cupid doll for being like an ally or an accomplice, or I think they believe that that is some sort of position that they can belong to and say they're done and wipe their hands clean and the work is over. But it requires just a lot of checking your own egos. I've gotten really quiet about the things that I do in this world, specifically because of the targeting, but also because of the pedestalizing. I don't want people to dehumanize, or that's not the right word, because I don't want people to put me on a pedestal because of the work that I'm doing. I'm just trying to live my life. But I do believe in propaganda by the deed. And I do believe that we, the people who are doing a lot of the things can show like how certain things are done. And sorry, getting back to your point of like what more accomplices can do, is, give your land and the kind of esoteric wealth that you've been given since the beginning of this white colonial nation. Give funding, fund different like autonomous organizing events, fund people directly, because like I know how much some of these nonprofit CEOs be making, and that's no shade, but like, come on, y'all, there are sex workers that literally do the most to like feed, people, and y'all are out here, these NGO CEOs are writing letters, and it's really dastardly. In any case, I think that, giving land back to Indigenous and Afro-Indigenous peoples is also important for Black trans peoples, because you best believe that we're working with each other. We have been working with each other since the inception of this country. And that would also, help to really like find ways to survive the kind of the next wave of like world ending that we're about to experience, or that we are kind of experiencing. I think, and always say that Black and Indigenous peoples have already experienced an apocalypse or a world ending. So who better to defer to on survival than Black and Indigenous people and Afro-Indigenous peoples, and trans people? You know, like, unfortunately, like the age of like a trans woman's life is going down and down. But you best believe that we're dreaming ourselves into being, and we're still surviving and living our lives despite what the world says to us. So yeah, I just wanted to say all that. And yeah, fuck the patriarchy.
Period. Period. Yes, please, Wriply.
I wanted to add on to something you said, edxi, about, you know, these white cis-led organizations, the LGBTQIA organizations that are, you know, grossing 6 figures or more in their yearly salaries. Like the fact that they are making this kind of money off of the ribs that they snatched from Black and brown trans folk who were doing that work while living on the margins because they had to, while they marched down the street in mass to protect themselves. And now here we are, a few years later. I'm not going to say 100 because I don't know. I don't think it's that long. But no, a few years later. I'm kidding. But no, making thousands and thousands of dollars off of the work that was set forth by our ancestors while we continue to struggle, and all they offer us is a yearly reminder of our death. Surrender all of
Girl, you keep cutting out on the best parts.
Yeah,
You're
sounding went out again.
It's killing me. It's like we're just like, what? Oh, we can't hear you.
Yeah, the universe is inspiring right now. So if you could say it again, we are at the part talking about them making a lot of money off of our ancestors.
Yes.
No.
All that money that you make off of our backs, surrender it. All of that money that you spend on vacation houses and doing cocaine at the pride events, surrender it. You know, give it to the people that need it. Stop spending money off of ideas that weren't yours. Stop pushing people of color, trans people, Black trans people out after you get everything you need from them, after you've squeezed water from that rock and just tosses it aside. After you toss us aside and make millions of dollars off of our backs, you're damning yourself. Because when it comes down to it, we already know how to survive. And we'll do it and leave you in the dust. So if you're trying to be an accomplice, fam, step up, surrender all that money, give it back to the people that you stole it from.
Yes. Y'all, I already knew that y'all was going to drop all of this knowledge because, like you said, there's so much wisdom and so much, like, yes, we can talk about generational and historical trauma, but we cannot ignore the ancestral generational wisdom that we continuously pass down to each other. And too often our accomplices forget how much we know. Like you all said, we know how to survive. We've been knowing. And if they really want to survive, they got to listen to us. So I really appreciate y'all so much. We have a few questions that we can answer, that you all can answer from the attendees. So one of the questions, I'll just read it here. It says, thank you all for sharing. Since many of us attending teach empowerment self-defense, and so many of your stories of self-defense include negative experiences related to objects for self-defense, I'm curious if any of you have taken a self-defense class and what your experiences have been. many organizations are working or already have more BIPOC, TG, and C leadership in classes. In addition to that, what would make these classes more accessible and a better option? So folks don't have to depend on objects that oftentimes can cause another set of problems. So I think the question in there is, have you taken self-defense classes and what has your experience been? And what are the ways that these classes can be more accessible and safer for all of you? And you can start, whoever.
Oh, do you want to go or?
No, you go ahead, sis.
Okay. I've definitely taken a few self-defense classes. I've been asked to teach self-defense classes, but do not feel skilled enough to teach self-defense just yet. Yeah, I think the ones that I've taken more like all women's classes. There's like a really amazing Filipino kata Pikiti Tersha, damn, I forgot the last word, but Kali, it's like knife fighting. And I've taken those classes a few times and I really appreciate them. They're really amazing. And I think it's really important when you're having like all women's spaces to not have these like cis sexist viewpoints of you know, the biology and like, you know, be sure you're not like making people feel excluded by talking about like how sacred your womb is, you know, like those kinds of things that can, you know, really like hit a nerve with particularly trans women. And then, you know, of course, trans men also are experiencing like violence at the hand of likely cis hetero men. So I think, you know, that's really important. Those spaces are really important to carve out, or just cutie POC spaces in general. I haven't been to a specific cutie POC led, yeah, like self-defense training or whatnot, but yeah, there was a lot to that question. I think another part is, I think, I think viewing at it from a place of, well, I'll stop there and I might add on a little more.
I don't know if I'm still frozen. Am I frozen? Can you hear me? Okay, good. I've taken quite a few self-defense classes. When I was younger, I took boxing and kickboxing.
We lost your sound again. We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Wriply.
Grappling classes and a few capoeira classes. I haven't been in all, you know, QT POC spaces before. I would say that a way to make that more accessible, I'm still not sure if I'm frozen or not. Everybody else is frozen.
You're
I would
currently
say
not
a way,
frozen.
okay, good. I would say to make that more accessible would be to record your classes and put them online and invite folks from your area, you know, travel, you know, make it free and outside, and because capitalism, I understand that people need to exist in this capitalist society for real, but we also all need to exist. So if you're trying to teach people how to throw them bows, like teach people how to throw them bows, like let people give to you what they can while you give them that will and that ability to survive, because not a lot of people had that roughneck upbringing that I did. A lot of people, that roughneck upbringing, which is why I'm like a fucking rockwaller. Like when it comes to getting into it with people, I'm jumping fences and ready to go for it. So, but not a lot of people have that that neck bone upbringing. So try to remember to prioritize peace in the space, of course, and try your best to leave conversations about triggering conversations or traumatic conversations out of the mix. Let's just make this a very free, fun.
We just lost the last little bit of your sound again, right after free and fun. We can't hear you. Oh, yes, we can.
There we are. Okay, what did you say?
The last thing we heard was free and fun something.
Oh, just a free, fun ass-kicking experience. Simple, Yeah.
Thank you. Same question to you, Ky. Have you taken self-defense, and what's your experience been? And then what are ways that these classes can be more accessible and safer for Black trans people?
Actually, in my hometown, we don't have any place to take any kind of self-defense, anything in the area I live. Small South Georgia area, we don't have anything in this actual area. So that would be a nice project to start. Now that I'm thinking about it, but we don't have anything in my area, so I really can't say much about it. I have seen a few things online, but it wouldn't be something that I would actually go to because of just the way that the person that is going to be holding the class, just how they were talking in their little introduction. It didn't make me feel like it would be a safe place to go. I didn't feel too comfortable just by listening to them talk. So, you can usually tell a lot about a person by listening to them talk. And if I'm listening to you and, you're supposed to be teaching me something and I'm just really not getting it, then it's not going to be a point of me even attempting this because I don't feel safe. I don't feel like you're confident enough in whatever skills that you're trying to teach. So I don't know, but that's just my opinion. But at this moment, we don't have anything in my area, but that would be a nice project to start if anybody want to help with that. So yeah.
You heard it here, folks. Reach out to Ky to create that space. We have about 10-ish minutes left, and there was a question that was specifically for edxi that I'm gonna ask, and of course, the other two of you can also respond to it with your own thoughts as well. But this question was about living outside of a capitalist system. Can you share more about what that looks like and how you survive?
There isn't really an inside or outside of capitalism or imperialism. I think there's steps you can do to control or just to move in autonomous ways. There's examples of autonomous zones within like capitalist societies. If you look at the Zapatistas, they've actually like held down like a good resistance, armed resistance at that, in their lands in Chiapas since '94. So I would just look up autonomous movements, and yeah, like I feel like, you know, there's like this like wanting to acknowledge the like gotcha moment, you know, you're participating in capitalism already, but like I think I think that what a lot of us have been attempting to do has been overly, maybe overshadowed. So like a lot of the work that I've done, specifically not inside of nonprofits, particularly within collectives and not like large platform organizations that are based off of corporate structure, having like CEOs or treasurers or what have you, and just doing things in a little bit more horizontally instead of hierarchically structured. Their people aren't privy to those kinds of practices, and because they don't know that, like, oh, we can just formulate a food program in our neighborhood ourselves, or oh, every time the police come on our block, all of everybody in our houses, we can all stand outside and watch them. There's just specific tactics and strategies that people aren't keen to, and that's fine, that's okay, but don't assume that these things aren't possible and haven't been possible. The reason why mutual aid has become so popular is because the people who have been doing mutual aid for the last few years, decades, centuries have survived off of a practice to meet each other's needs without there needing to be a third party or structure relegating who gets what. These are decisions that are horizontally made, that don't have, again, top-down structures that say, oh, you're worthy of getting X, Y, and Z resources because you're a Christian, or because you're straight, or because you don't do drugs, or because you're not a whore. I think, like, you know, gradually moving away from that is like important. Yes, I'm definitely having to make really hard decisions. I recently did a Mellon Foundation artist residency. The Mellon Foundation is evil for all intents and purposes. You know, there's been other really amazing, brilliant comrades in the past that have written extensively about the nonprofit industrial complex. And I feel like, yeah, I think it's really important to just allow, you know, allow these critiques to happen, and like maybe help guide your practice into where you're not then being controlled by said state or government that we're actually trying to destroy. And you're also not like making that transform your ideas into commodified ones. So like, yes, I need money. Yes, like, you know, join me on Patreon. But it's also like, I need people to really think more deeply about our social relations and realize that this kind of capitalist, like, money goal in the end is not going to be worth shit when the water runs out. And, you know, should there be some sort of epidemic, pandemic, natural disaster that happens, the people that are on the front lines are often not, it's not the state the current state that exists. It's people like myself, like Wriply, who will be the first people to respond to said disasters, because like, so it's really looking at capitalism as the disaster, and not seeing yourself necessarily in or outside of capitalist society. We're still in it, but there's like things we can do interpersonally to transform our relations outside of this kind of narrative of like money making, commodifying literally every single aspect in relation. If that this, I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I think that, you know, also speaks to what you were speaking about earlier about, you know, really, we have to destroy these systems while working, or even if we're trying to navigate these systems. Like, I think there's a particular alchemy that happens when Black trans people in particular, like, if they're able to access these resources from these entities, you know, taking them and alchemizing them to create something different, I think is still a powerful thing. With our last couple of minutes, I don't know if Ky or Wriply, you wanted to share anything to that question or any final thoughts. We have about 3 minutes, so I want to make sure that we have enough time to thank all of our people as well.
I think I just have one final thought. I don't know if, am I frozen? Oh, good. Okay, I'm not frozen. I have one final thought. You know, it's just, we live in a world that's trying to destroy trans people. So us trying to destroy this world is self-defense.
Yes, yes, yeah, yes.
period. On period.
Yeah, I mean, if folks really didn't take anything else from this panel, which I'm sure you all did, please take that last nugget that Wriply just gave us. Like, exactly. Ky, did you want to add anything else? You good? Yeah, I mean, Wriply, you just really gave us the perfect closing to this really powerful conversation. Thank you all so much for your time this morning and for your wisdom and for your honesty and for calling all of us and all of these accomplices in the space to account and giving us tools on how we can all better show up for Black trans people. I want to thank our ASL interpreters, Walter and Glashonda, and I also want to thank our Spanish interpreters, Carmen and Jovan. I would like to thank our captioner, Maggie. Thank you, Amita, for holding it down with all of the tech. And a very special thank you to our co-sponsors, Impact International, Empowerment Self-Defense Alliance, and National Women's Martial Arts Federation. And the biggest thank you to the three of you. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, much love to everyone. And that's it. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.